What's up, guys? This is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we are going to talk about straight bar squats, do's and don'ts. Now, I know a lot of you guys look at me as kind of an anti-straight bar all the time squatter because I train conjugate, which is absolutely true, and we're going to get into some reasons of why to and to not squat with a straight bar all the time. So let's get to it. Well, let's start off with some kind of unknowns, which is going to be the don'ts. Why don't we want to squat with a straight bar all the time? Well, reason one is that it's bad on your shoulders. So your shoulders being in that big of a pinched position is going to start causing shoulder wear and tear, and in my opinion, is harder on the shoulder than actually bench pressing properly, just because you're pinched back so far. Don't believe me? Keep raising your bench press up and tell me how comfortable it is to get under a straight bar. It hasn't been comfortable for me to get under a straight bar since I was about 17, 18 years old. Now, the problem with squatting with a straight bar all the time and being in that pinched position is that I think it causes a lot of unwanted mileage on the shoulder. And if you're a lifter in general, it's going to start affecting your bench press. So the real reason when I was in my early mid-20s that I started shifting away from squatting with a straight bar all the time was because I was trying to preserve my shoulders to be a big bench presser, which worked really well. But the problem is that most people, they don't want to take the time, experience, or go reach out to someone else to realize that training specifically the same way all the time is going to cause a lot of issues, both physically and psychologically, but it also just causes a lot of wear. So the one reason you don't want to squat with a straight bar all the time is because it's hard on your shoulders. The next thing that I think it's hard on is your elbows. So for a lot of people, they're slowly, as they get older, going to have to move out, move out, move out. But when you start torquing on the bar, when you're squatting, you're going to start putting a lot of pressure on your elbows. I've seen people dislocate and tear all kinds of things off their elbows squatting, and one of the main reasons is straight bar squatting is hard on your elbows. So the point is that you need to squat with a straight bar, but doing it all the time is going to cause some unwanted problems, and that's going to be elbow tendonitis or elbow injuries. So as you notice, a lot of these injuries for straight bar squatting are related to the upper body. The next thing that caused me a lot of issues was in my wrist. So I had to slowly move my hands out because my wrists, as they got stronger to bench press, got less flexible in order to reach to the bar. Now, causing a lot of wrist issues can mean a lot of different problems for a lot of different lifts. It can affect your grip on the deadlift. It can affect your bench press technique and how well you can hold the bar. And again, if you're focused on your wrist while you're squatting, it could affect how much you squat. So that's another big issue. The wrist can cause a lot of issues with the straight bar squatting as well. Now let's move down to the other parts of the body that I cause issues of don't or why not to squat with a straight bar. Another major issue is a lot of people that squat with a straight bar constantly are going to use very, very similar technique all the time, which is going to cause similar wear patterns on the knee, the hip, and the lower back or mid back. Now, this over time can cause a lot of issues, but the reason that we get confused on why shouldn't we squat with a straight bar all the time and people argue about it all the time is because you have to last long enough to realize it's not good enough, okay? So if I was only going to try to get strong for a couple of years, I'd probably straight bar squat all the time because you're going to need to master the movement. But what happens after you've already mastered how to squat with a straight bar? Get in my opinion, for example, when I was 23, 24 years old, I already had American records in the squat. I was already a great squatter. So how much more was I going to get to be a better squatter by training with a straight bar all the time? The answer was not very much. So as I moved and rotated into these different bars that were actually harder than a straight bar, I started to notice that the straight bar squat became almost second nature and actually easier. So you still have to train very specifically to do a straight bar, but you would be surprised with the safety bar, the camber bar, and different kinds of resistances will do or help the joints to recover by putting pressure points in different areas. Now, there's some do's that we've kind of hinted on in the don't area of why we need to squat with a straight bar. Well, one, if we're a beginner or intermediate, we're going to need consistent volume in that particular lift in order to get better at it, especially if we want to compete. Two, we're going to have to get the feel of that bar on our back. So you almost have to create almost nearly a back callus in order for that bar to sit on your back and be somewhat comfortable. Now, for most people, like when I was younger, I would have bruises, even blood marks on my back from the straight bar digging in so hard. Now, once I got up to, I'd say 10 years of solid squatting, my upper back never really got tender. The skin never got tender from it. The point is that you have to create almost a specific kind of callus in a particular area on that lift in order for it to have higher transfer. So I'm a huge proponent in the beginning stages, especially if you're trying to be a power lifter. You definitely want to squat with a straight bar quite often when you're younger. Now, let's go into a different topic though. If I were to try to be a general fitness athlete, or just say anti-aging, or I'm using strength training to get better at sports, what the hell does it matter how good my straight bar squat is? It doesn't. I would rather see an athlete that is good with a safety bar, a straight bar, a camber bar, bands, chains, boxes, no boxes, and multiple stances. Why? The strength may be more transferable, right? If somebody can squat 500 with a straight bar, that doesn't necessarily mean if I change their foot position or throw a box underneath them or do it with a different kind of tension that they're going to be able to still do that lift. Meaning that maybe the transferability of an actual power lift is not insanely high. Okay, so I'm not saying that they're not usable for sports. I'm just saying think about it in nature. Would you rather have an athlete that can run all different ways or just straight? Well, I know which one I would want. So now the trick is too, there's one other thing that I think needs to be said on the straight bar squatting. And that is, I think when you do straight bar squats properly, which is your head slightly up and your chest up, straight bar squats actually teach posture very, very well. They teach you how to hold thoracic positioning very, very well. So I do like straight bar squats. I think they need to be used in your program. How much can be very individual. So how much would you say for you? Well, if you're a beginner, you probably need to touch a straight bar, I would say every 10 to 14 days. If you're intermediate, I would say every 14 to 20 days. And if you're advanced, you could get away with not squatting with a straight bar for periods of months. Now, I'm going to throw some stuff at you that you may have never seen before. And that is that the Dynamo Club, which was one of the best groups of Olympic lifters ever assembled in Russia, had 70 variations of the two different Olympic lifts, meaning the clean and jerk and the snatch were broken into 70 different pieces, and they would rotate those 70 pieces all the time once they became an advanced lifter. The reason was to reduce mileage, but also to reduce burnout. So what you might find is that if you've been training a long time and you've been squatting with a straight bar all the time, you start rotating in these different bars, you're probably going to start seeing some massive success as long as you just touch on the straight bar occasionally. So again, I don't want to bust balls and say don't train with a straight bar. I think it's very important for all stages, but it becomes a different level of importance for different stages and different needs. For most of us, the psychological burnout of training the exact same way all the time is going to cause us to basically not want to train anymore. By rotating bars, you're going to reduce that psychological burnout and you're going to be able to last longer and train harder. So I'll talk to you guys later. If you got any questions, please join Patreon. And if you need help and all this stuff's just too much, get on our online coaching where we can dial this stuff in for your needs and your equipment.